Hello, everyone. It's Matt, and this is the third episode. I want to say I'm.
Yep,
I stand to be convinced otherwise.
exactly. Well, you might as well just say it's the third episode. I mean,
The third
starting with episode
episode.
0 is, anyways, it's the third episode as far as
No,
everything's
man, that's how the Korean people do like human birth. But anyway, that's a whole
concerned.
other thing. Yeah. So, pardon me. I am Matt. This is today New Brunswick, tomorrow the world, episode 3 or episode 2, but it's the third in the series.
Yep.
And cutting away here to my esteemed and excellent colleague.
Hi, and this is Dan over on the East Coast side of things. Yeah, looking forward to another episode here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm over on the West Coast, so there's you know how there's no we in team, but we got the West Coast and the East Coast, and that's
hmm
a we
Yeah,
acronym of sorts. Um, those and other fine bon mots are coming at you momentarily.
yeah.
Um, so before digressing too far into things, without setting up the real context,
hmm
just to say, first of all, Dan, you came up with a great friggin' topic here, which was, as I understood it, anyway, as sort of, you know, a handful of artists or releases that were meaningful within 2022. However, not a release that year as such. That's what.
Exactly. Yeah,
Wow, awesome.
yeah. I
Okay,
went
good.
with bands I listened to a lot in 2022 that didn't have a big release that year.
Yeah.
One or two of them might have had like, a single or something, or yeah. One of them
And
technically increased its entire recorded output by 50%, but that's not saying by much. We'll get into that later. But anyways,
Well,
yeah.
and I'm totally like, so, the past couple times we've done this, I've had a preview in a digital document of what, Dan's selections are. And I'll be honest, it's even, I guess, probably informed what I've come up with. We've come up with a different workflow this time around. And as such, I'm legitimately curious to hear which ones Dan's come up with. I've arbitrarily chosen 5, and we
hmm
don't normally ever do the 5, but for posterity and for overall context, it's more
hmm
helpful for me than it is for anyone else, I think, at least. But I just want to step back just even a wee bit further. How are the holidays and whatnot for you, dude? How was that whole thing?
The holidays were good. I took the week off between Christmas and New Year's, and yeah, it was. I don't know. I try not to get stressed out about too much. We actually just got snow the other day, so we had a green Christmas.
Okay.
Um, yeah, apparently New Year's Eve, my neighbors thought Jen and I had been murdered,
Oh, for
because
realsies?
for
Like, is that
realsies. But I think they had, you know, there were other factors influencing their.
so like to the point that they called police to
Oh
check on
no,
you?
they didn't call
Yeah.
police
Okay.
because the things didn't go all. If things had gone on much longer, they probably would have. Because what it was is, I mean, as you've seen, we've got this little dog that occasionally comes in and crawls all over me and stuff, and he's
Mhm.
got a bit of separation anxiety. And New Year's Eve, Jen and I decided we'd go out and grab a few drinks and have a burger at the lovely brew pub behind the Canadian Tire, in the central Spryfield. And it's
Man, you
actually a nice
shouldn't,
little spot,
dude.
Serpent Brewing, if you ever get a chance.
You just totally outed your own location here. I
It's a
can
little
I
ways.
can
It's yeah,
Yeah, I can cut it out or not. We're
yeah.
not.
No, that's
But
fine.
no,
But
man,
anyways,
brew
that's
pub.
where
Yeah, yeah,
that's
that's dope.
at a local establishment. We decided to go there and
Yeah, yeah, no, that's
have some burgers and some drinks, and we were out for not too long, but long enough that the dog just kind of lost his patience and started freaking out and barking. And normally he's pretty quiet, and they were both a little under the influence
did they have
themselves.
do they have fireworks to freak your dog out by chance? Was
That
that
was later
anything
on
to
in
do
the
with it?
evening, and he wasn't
Ah,
too
gotcha.
bad at that point. Like they weren't that
Okay.
close. where we're up on it. Actually, where our house is up on a hill. We have a good view of, or our condo is up on a hill. We have a really good view of like all of everybody's janky backyard fireworks displays, pretty much between here and like the Dalhousie campus. So and then
Man,
of course like the
you're making
legit
me
ones as
yearn for
well.
the East Coast, dude.
Oh yeah, for
Like,
sure. So we just like
uh,
it's like when we go up to our bedroom on the top floor, we have a perfect view. So we just hung up there, and it's like went downstairs to the basement, had a smoke, then went upstairs and watched the fireworks. But anyways, the dog was freaking out while we were gone.
and
And
hence the
neighbors,
concerns
I
about
was talking to
murder.
the neighbors the other day, and they're like, "Yeah, we're we're just having a puff, watching some true crime documentaries," and we started getting worried, and
One thing led to
the dog was
another.
barking, and we're like,
Yeah.
"What if he's barking over their corpses?"
What if he's chewing on their ears and their noses right
Exactly.
now?
So
Trying
what's the Nick Lowe song, Mary Provost?
Oh, dude,
About the little dog
Nick
eating the
Lowe.
woman's corpse.
Nick Lowe is too intelligent for me. Nick Lowe exists on the artist that I sincerely mean to like reach out for and attain and engage with at some point. Hasn't happened yet, but
Yeah, I know a couple of songs. It's like I've done my research enough to know a couple of songs, and I own one of his albums.
good for you.
I also know that one other song, Mary Provost, just because the pop punk band J Church used to cover it.
Okay.
And I'm a big J Church fan, so
I think I may need to start annotating these videos myself just to catch the peripheral references to things that I've heard of like fleetingly, but then you kind of recontextualize as being
I'll have to
cool enough to make me want to check it out, right? So
maybe I'll have to find a YouTube rip of J Church's cover of Mary Provost and put that in my copy of the show notes. Like,
you ought to. I mean, and there's no rush for the show notes either.
Yeah.
Don't feel overly, that's just.
Anyways,
this here's the thing, right? So, so in that case, Dan,
to get back to the regular topic, my neighbors had, after too much true crime documentaries, etc., briefly considered the fact that my partner and I might have been murdered, and that's why our dog was barking so much on New Year's Eve. But other than that, it was pretty chill. We hung out and had more drinks and watched deathmatch wrestling and filmed in a casino in New Jersey.
Man.
Yep.
So that's like, anyway, I'll ask you in the DMs about the whole
that's a whole other that's a whole other
subscription model and how to access that, because I mean I probably can't get that on TSN, right?
No, that not on TSN.
No, okay.
Fight Network, I think it's
fair enough. Well, again, that's totally to be continued, but anyways, I'm actually interested enough in this just as a phenomenon. That Mickey Rourke movie, The Wrestler, from 8 years back or 12 years back or whatever. That's
the promotion that we were watching, Game Changer Wrestling, who Effie, who's the wrestler whose flag is hanging behind me here, works for, amongst others, a couple of years there. Their big event every year is called Spring Break.
Okay.
That's basically just like, what if Quentin Tarantino put together a wrestling show? In terms of just like random names from the past and stuff that will show up. But the guy that was showing Mickey Rourke how, like, talking about like, cutting bleeding like the forehead and that sort of thing. Necro Butcher. Yeah, who's actually he's a real fucking creep. He's a pretty shitty dude in real life, but he has appeared. He's showed up sort of very old and out of shape looking in the clusterfuck match of one of the Spring Break events that Jen went
registered
to
trademark
from this. It's an annual tradition on these GCW Spring Break shows. Is the clusterfuck.
I swear to God, between this and the Ed Tech podcast, I just have so much like other like.
Well,
here's your left brain and here's your right brain. And here's
you've got all the highbrow stuff covered with your Ed Tech, and I'm just like, this about like weird wrestling and that sort of thing.
If I were just to take even this pile of books and like documents and stuff that's like just stacked on top of this printer just behind this computer, man, that's how I roll, man. Like I wouldn't call the academic stuff high culture, like by any means,
Mhm.
but it takes a certain tenacity and wherewithal to get yourself into the point when you are navigating within that space.
Mhm.
And as much as I've been able to, roll within that for my career, arguably with some success until about a year ago, give or take, uh, but then, this other stuff is like, it's just wide open. Like, bring me
Mhm.
your Kevin Smith, bring me your Quentin Tarantino, bring me your
Yeah.
friggin' Butcher League level,
Yeah.
provincial level or whatever level wrestling promotion, man. This is just,
Yeah.
I swear, man. Okay.
All right.
I'm going to arbitrarily just say that the
Yeah.
first
Let's get.
thing on my list,
Okay.
and
Yeah. You can get started.
yeah, and I won't even be long on it, because I may actually, try and, wedge in. I'm aware that there's the notes supplement to this, so
Yeah.
I'm going to do my best not to like overlap. Um, but yeah, man. So for me, and again, I appreciated the opportunity to speak about this because there were some things I was just like, man, I wanted this to go
Mhm.
on the list from one of the times before. Okay, have you heard of Northcote Dan previously at all, or?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't
Okay,
really. I'm
okay.
not too
So
familiar.
the only reason I even know about it at all is because Samedi, I'm mispronouncing his name, Sean Gardner,
Yeah.
in Montreal. Very awesome dude, doing very important, significant work. And shout out to
Mhm.
Sean if you're even listening to this once. But he flipped me a Facebook message because I was going to see Hot Water Music
Mhm.
in Vancouver. And he's just like, you should make sure you see the opening act. And it was this guy. And
Okay.
he's like, and this is something where I was drunk the whole time, most of it.
Mhm.
But it's like, I remember seeing him sort of being midway through, and it was like I was like staring at I'm going, this is
Yeah.
like legit good, And then
Mhm.
at the end of it, he kind of sort of outroed his set by playing something off the first Chris Wallard record and the Ship
Oh
Keys.
wow.
And to me,
Nice.
that's good. And to me, that's going pretty deep. And the fact
Yeah. Yeah.
that Hot Water Music is opening and Waller doesn't tour. So I
Mhm.
was just like, yeah, Chris Waller, motherfucker, or something like that. And it's just like, oh, yeah, you're that guy, at this show. And I'm like, mission not accomplished. But nevertheless, I respected the effort, and the
Mhm.
delivery. And it was good enough that I hope I made up for it, my belligerent behavior somewhat.
Yeah.
I went out, and as soon as I landed in Kamloops the next day, I got like all 5 of his records that are available there on vinyl ordered to my house, and I promptly listened to them all. And I was like, yeah, this is fine, this is fine. But and it, as the year kind of tapered off, I kind of got interested in other things, such as we've discussed on the show. Thank
Mhm.
you for the opportunity to do so. And in summary, one of his albums in particular, aside from the fact that he's like, he's got a pretty decent Instagram presence to the point that he did like an hour-long impromptu acoustic show that was just
Mhm.
freaking cool. Just that kind of thing. Just kind of like,
Yeah.
well, I'm in the studio and I could just turn on my phone and do this. It was pretty freaking cool. That was like in December before the holidays.
Mhm.
But then friggin' so so there's this one record that he's got, and I am winding this down. Hope is Made of Steel. It's just like from 2008, I want
Yeah.
to say. It's pretty far back in his catalog, but I just remember like what life was like for me around that time, and it sounds sort of contemporaneous of the punk of the time, like
Mhm.
like Gaslight Anthem, like
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like like popular enough, punk music that is actually still kind of got some quality for it. And then I've been listening to that record like incessantly since the beginning of this year, and it's like here's a Canadian person relative to like within 10 years of my age who's kind of talking about stuff I can relate to
Yeah.
somewhat, and in doing
Mhm.
it in a way where like he could be making money doing a more
Yeah.
commercial variety of music. And his background, just to really wind it down, just to go back to your initial question, is like he was in a Christian hardcore band from like Alberta,
Okay. What were
and
they called?
fuck, it's It'll be in the notes, man.
Okay, I'm curious because
But
I do know
like,
of a few of those.
and like, but then he sort of at age 20 or 21, he kind of
Okay.
just stepped away from religious doctrine fully.
Yeah.
And he's, so at that point, so like I saw him open for Hot Water Music. He like toured with Chuck Reagan in Europe and stuff,
Hmm.
and again, his 5 or whatever records, I mean, they're all just they're up tempo acoustic punk / acoustic
Yeah.
punk with a band, and that kind of stuff resonates with me. So, anyways,
Yeah.
dude,
For sure.
I could talk longer, but I won't, and that's because that's what the notes are for. What do
All
you
right.
got on your friggin' top one, man? I'm curious.
Okay.
I'm
My
legit.
top
Yeah.
one, the first one that I wanted to mention is just, it's one of those, I don't know. It's like, I've been trying to make, as been mentioned on the show before, I've been trying to make more of an effort to discover more new music
Yep.
and like check out more new things. And this band is a rare example of like kind of getting in on the ground floor with somebody. It feels, with an artist, it feels like, because they're a newer band from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. It's a band called MS Paint. That
I'm sorry.
their
Can
name.
you just hold on for 1 second,
Okay.
dude? I'm sorry. I swear to God. Well, I gotta mute this and then yell something to my kids. Just
Okay,
1
sure.
second, because I want this actually come clearly in such a way as can be heard. Okay.
All right.
That'll be 30 seconds just zeroed out from the thing. So to back up, Dan, then from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and they're
Mississippi, MS
There we
Paint. And the way that I heard of this band is there's a podcast I listen to called Demo Listen, where basically they just get new artists to send them their demos, mostly like punk and metal. And the guy who puts on one of the co-hosts of the show also puts on shows in some town in like Indiana or something like that. And anyways, this band had just played in the venue that he booked shows at, and he was just like, he posted a clip on his Instagram and was just like, oh my God, you need to go see this band MS Paint when they come through your town. They've got a demo, look it up. And so I went and found their demo on their Bandcamp page, and it's also available on Spotify. It's 4 songs. And they released it in like the first week of March 2020, and then weren't really able to tour at all.
So like, what's the overall gist of the sound?
The gist of the sound, basically, the way you can describe it is like, imagine like Fugazi, or like that sort of like In on the Kill Taker era Fugazi, where you've got some really upbeat stuff and some more kind of just like tense, sort of like more mid-tempo sort of thing. But replace the guitars with synthesizers. And put in like more kind of like offbeat, kind of, I hate to say groovy, but effectively groovy kind of drumming. The best way, it's like Fugazi and the Death Grips having a baby together. Because their singer has Dee Dee has kind of like shouty vocals that are like, it's not rapping, but it's almost like some of like the Beastie Boy. It's like I've heard some of it almost compared to like the Beastie Boys stuff where they're playing live instruments, but mixed with kind of like really energetic post-hardcore. Like they're the kind of band that you'd see them play a basement show, and it would just be really intense, but like folks wouldn't necessarily be moshing because they're respecting each other's space while also just like absorbing the music. And there might be like a lyric sheet. In the 90s, they would have handed out a lyric sheet or something because people wouldn't be able to look up the shit on the internet. And yeah, they only had these 4 songs released for the longest time. And then they were touring more and more this year, and another band called Military Gun decided to bring them on tour with them. And as part of that, as part of this tour, like they had Military Gun brought MS Paint and a band from Vancouver, Woolworm, and another band called Daisy that I'm not that familiar with, but they ended up doing a special edition of their album with 3 new songs, each of which was a collaboration with one of these bands they were on tour with. So they did like they did like sort of a duet with the singer from Woolworm, something with this band Daisy, and then sort of like an all band, like both bands playing together song with MS Paint. That it almost sounds like an old Beastie Boys song or something. Sorry, my dog's just crawling all over me here.
That's no problem at all. Yeah.
They put out like, they released like a single, as in like one single song called Acid, that's like 2.5 minutes long. It almost reminds me of like something like La Tigra, but with more masculine yelly vocals, mixed with like Nation of Ulysses or something. And yeah, like I said, just it's synthesizers, like distorted bass, and very kind of like, yeah, groovy, for lack of a better term, drumming, and just kind of like,
That
yeah,
sounds dope.
it's and yeah, they just seem like, a band that's like, they've started getting mentioned on a few of these lists that like when the Grammys
No, turn
came
it off
out,
now.
like when the Grammy nominations came out and Turnstile had a few nominations, and then all of a sudden they're
Oh
like, hey, if you
yes,
like Turnstile, check out these other bands.
they got some
They
Gen
got
Z
lumped, they
people in on
started
the
getting lumped
voting
in with
now.
that. And it's like,
Yeah. Okay.
another podcast that I listened to recently actually mentioned going to see them live, and the host was talking to the members of the band at the merch table and telling them like, this is the last time I'll ever be able to do this, right? Like, you guys are going to be huge, and next time you come through town, you're going to be paying someone to sell your shirts for you, because they just seem like they're like, they've got the kind of sound that I could see being popular with a wider audience, not necessarily in like pop realm, but like, could play more than just like your basement show venue. With
I'm sure
whatever the right
there's
exposure.
artist and repertory, industry types. You
Yeah.
know what I was thinking of, Dan, while you were speaking, and I don't know if you heard me yelling at my kid just now. I realized I might have been
Yes.
off muted. Anyway, that's what editing tools are for.
Yeah.
But anyway, no. So like what I sort of a common theme that I'm experiencing here, from just talking with you is, you speak pretty of scenes, right? It's like,
Yeah.
here's one band, from with the thing, but then you contextualize it well, is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. So for my own education here, I actually think I'm going to have to do just like an annotated thing for this, a transcript, a written
Yeah.
transcript, just because, some of the stuff won't catch it through to show notes. And God knows I'm looking for more purposeful
Yeah.
ways of tracking down new music. So
Mhm.
anyway, well, that's dope, man. Well, why don't we
Yeah.
keep rolling? Why don't we go with your number two, and then I'll
My
speak
number
to my number
two?
two. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. My number two was Chubby and the Gang.
You mentioned
who I've
them last time,
Yes, I
right?
mentioned them before. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
They're from England. It's they're fronted by a guy named Charlie Manning Walker, who is a second generation punk. Basically, his parents did the animation did the animated segments of the Great Rock and Roll Swindle, the Sex Pistols movie.
That's legit and weird.
I know, and
Both.
he's like a punk scene Nepo baby.
Wow, did you just say what I think you just said?
Yes,
I heard that. Yeah. Okay.
I realized there were a couple things that tied sort of different picks on my list together, just with certain themes, and I realized there's a couple of them are like bands fronted by people whose parents were also part of the scene, and this is one of those two.
Nice.
But yeah, they're anyway. Charlie Manning Walker has been in like a ton of bands over the past probably like 15 years or so in the London scene. He's currently in 3 right now. Besides Chubby and the Gang, he's in the Chisel, who are more of like an oi band, playing guitar, and they're actually doing a North American tour. They're playing in Maine next weekend.
If I lived close enough to Maine, like I did at
Portland, Maine, so
point,
it's a little bit too far of a drive.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're doing a bunch of shows around New England with this really great band called End It, who are worth checking out for sure. That are one of my like runner-up picks for 2022. They're 7-inch. But anyways, and he's also in a band called Boss, which is him, like a studio project with him and Jonah Falco, who plays in Fucked Up.
There we
And
go.
he's
We're
been living in
uh,
Jonah's been living in London for a while now. I think he lives on like a houseboat or something in London, I guess. And he's been producing a lot of bands over there. And yeah, he's got this. He produced both of Chubby and the Gang's LPs. They've got two. There's one called Speed Kills from 2020, and one called The Mutts Nuts from 2021. And it's like a mix of like just sort of straight ahead punk and like a little bit of blues, a little bit of like kind of pub rock, a little bit of like, you know, almost like R&B type stuff. Like they'll throw a harmonica in there here and there, but then they'll have like a song that sounds like AC/DC. And it's all very like, you know, anti-cop, anti-landlord, pro-working class kind of stuff. But just like with, you can tell they have like an appreciation for a lot of different genres of music. And it's like, I can see, it's funny, there are quite a few bands out now. Like I feel like Fucked Up have a new album coming out this year, I guess, and
yeah.
I really hope that they get the appreciation for basically laying the groundwork for so much stuff that's going on, and even just thinking like with Chubby and the Gang, the music is like influenced by a wide variety of genres, but the vocals kind of for the most part are kind of just like rah, rah. And that's very like that's something that very much makes me think of Fucked Up.
I telling you, man, chemistry.
You know,
of
it's like an
every,
8-minute
yeah.
shoegaze song, and then just like, you know, screaming over top of it.
Sweet, no, man, that's
But
awesome.
but yeah, Chubby and the Gang are more, yeah, it's more straight ahead, but it's like it's the kind of thing that like I can see a lot of, you know, a lot of different people being able to appreciate it, and like it kind of it hits a lot of the notes that like bands like, are you familiar with the Raining Sound?
Oh God, yes, I
Yeah, it's
love
like
those
imagine
guys,
an oi version
man.
of the Raining Sound, and that's Chubby and the Gang. Yeah,
That's
they're
that's a really compelling description, dude.
yeah, that's actually one of the, when we were talking about Sloan, sort of American Sloan fans that I
Yeah.
know, that's another band that a lot of my friends that are currently really into Sloan, they're all also big fans of like Raining Sound.
Well, and so like for me, I mean, again, like again, what I appreciate about what you just described. First of all, thanks for throwing out the connection there
Yeah,
to Fucked Up. I won't
yeah.
say that I've got a ton of knowledge about them or their releases, but I listen to the Chemistry of Everyday Life or
Oh,
Chemistry
Chemistry
of
of Common Life. That's a
Common
good
Life.
album.
I listened to that
Um,
like quite a lot actually back in the day.
yeah.
So that's, you know, and I'm aware, you know, like they've done some remarkably
Mm,
progressive things for, you know, like you know, an aggro friggin' post-hardcore band from
exactly.
Toronto, right?
Yeah.
So now that kind of gives me context, you
Yeah.
know, for some of this other stuff.
And like these are all
You know,
bands,
yeah.
and you know, the way that you talked about sort of these scenes, like these are bands that are definitely like, you know, they saw the stuff that Fucked Up was doing and said like, hey, we can work other stuff that we like into what, you know. But in their case, you know, it might be like a Nick Lowe album or like that kind of thing, rather than like, here's, you know, our weird horn detour in the middle of the song. But yeah, both are out like yeah, both Speed Kills and the Mutts Nuts are like I feel like with all these, it ends with like, and I listen to them a lot.
Well, but
But
that's
yeah, they're just like, it's just like they hit a lot of the, they just a lot of those points that just like light up parts of my brain, but connect, but sort of from a few different genres at once.
you're wired to like the constituent parts and find delight
Exactly.
in an
That's
unexplored, yeah,
yeah,
I get what you're saying there, man,
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Oh, that's dope. And I guess what I would just say, just before I guess kind of maybe moving on a bit here, do you have
Mhm.
any? Are there any concerts that you're looking forward to? Do you have you purchased or are
Um,
aware of any shows in like next year? Well, it's not next year anymore. It's later on this year. Anything that you would try and aim to go to, or too early to tell?
Too early to tell right now. I
Fair
mean,
enough.
I'm a homebody a lot of the time these days. Like
Mm.
honestly,
I
like
hear you, man.
yeah,
I had,
Now that I'm living in the suburbs and all,
I don't know, man. The way you just described your New Year's Eve, like, I
yeah,
don't know if
it's like
suburbs is
I
necessarily how I would think of that, but
I
okay, that's
I did get out to a show a couple weeks ago. I don't know. I can't remember. I think it might have been just before the last time we recorded. I know
okay.
I was quite hungover the next day.
Gotcha.
But it was a memorial show for a Halifax musician who'd passed away a couple of years ago, but nobody really had a chance to like sort of do something to properly celebrate her life, kind of deal.
Oh,
Rosie Davis,
oh,
who was in a bunch of different bands, actually. Uh, kind of ties into some of the podcast selections because I initially found out about the record label that one of our other picks tonight because they released a couple of Rosie's old bands. La Vida es un Moose, I think is the name. How to pronounce? I can't. I'm mispronouncing the name of the record label. But anyways, they released Rosie's old band Vixens in the mid-aughts, and she played in just a lot of different bands that would, show up, end up on like sort of like the larger like hardcore festivals and like punk festivals around like
Vans
say like
Warped
New York,
Tour,
Toronto, that sort of
or
thing. She was in a really great band called Abject Pax in Halifax in the early 2000 teens, who have like an EP that's worth checking out. Anyways, there was a memorial show for her.
you're killing me,
And
dude. I'm
sorry.
sorry. I have graduate degrees. I have
Yeah, this is just how
I'm,
my brain works.
I'm just like
Anyways,
I knew this is what I was in for when I
yeah.
did this with you. But do go on, sir. Please.
Anyways,
I mean, this is
so at this show, they had basically copies of like all the records that Rosie had put up for sale, and a band called Mutated Void played. It was a lot of bands that were like folks that had been in, either played in bands with her or kind of like influenced by her presence in the scene. So there's a couple bands, Mutated Void and Black Dog, that were made up of folks that she had played in bands with that were both pretty like, short. Like Mutated Void's new album is up on Spotify, and I don't think any of the songs are longer than a minute. It's one of those sort of things. Black Dog are also pretty like fast and gnarly. And then another band called Suspects played, who were friends of mine, who were the reason why I was very hungover the next day. But anyways, who were just sort of like folks that I know have sort of seen come up through the scene over the years, who were pretty great. Anyways,
That's an awesome answer to that question, dude.
All right.
Wow.
But yeah, that was sort of my recent live music experience. And I was also supposed to go see an artist named JPEG Mafia play that night.
I think I've heard of them.
Yeah. He was supposed to play in Halifax back in September, and then there was a hurricane the day of the show. And then they moved it to one date, and then I think he got COVID or something.
Oh.
And they replaced it with a free DJ Jazzy Jeff show instead.
You've told me this before.
It got rescheduled to the show in December, and then there was kind of cruddy weather in other parts of the country, and then he didn't make it to town finally. So it got canceled
DJ Jazzy Jeff, Dan?
So it was a DJ Jazzy Jeff, like literal DJ set. But it was just impressive to see one of the masters of the craft at work. And it was him and Scratch Bastard.
Man, I know
were just
that.
kind of like
That's
trading
Halifax
back and forth
stuff,
on
right?
the turntables.
Yeah.
And like, it's like I listen to a lot of hip hop, but like live hip hop does not always come off as compelling as other genres. But like at the same time, I was a big fan of stuff like DJ Shadow and like Kid Koala and that sort of stuff in the 90s and aughts. That was just like the really like off the wall turntablism stuff. So I'll stand there and watch somebody just kind of, like DJ fiddle around with two techniques, like if it's like something interesting is going on, Man. And they played a lot of really cool stuff, and it was fun. It was up there. I got to see. I've seen most of like the Mount Rushmore of hip hop DJs, like old school hip hop DJs now, I think. I've seen Grandmaster Flash, Africa Bambaataa, Pete Rock, and that's most of them. There's like a couple more, but yeah, I've seen enough. And now DJ Jazzy Jeff, so that's like a good amount of like folks I'd really like to see, or was
Well, I
excited
mean,
to see. Anyways,
he may have more of a career now. I mean, maybe the Fresh Prince is like trying to dial him back up since he
yeah,
slapped the person at the movie event, back in,
yeah, who knows?
and it was scandalized,
Yeah,
remember? Yeah,
you
cool,
should go
man.
with another one of your picks.
Oh well, I mean, I might. So I'll
You
just
might.
even like I perchance I'm just trying to think now which one or ones. Let's see. I'm gonna
Yeah.
just kind of go with Ship Thieves, just because I don't have to spend that much time on it because I've
Hmm.
already talking about him,
Yeah.
Chris Wallard and his band since. So, like with Ship Thieves, I guess the reason I had to include them on the 2022 list
Hmm.
is because I friggin' got a tattoo of the cover art from their record
Nice.
from 2021. I was just like, man, I just lost my job. My marriage was really like I was in the bad part of like the
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah. I'm familiar with those sorts of arcs,
so
shall we say?
and I was just kind of like I was seeing a new person, for a few months. And so
Yeah.
anyway, this is actually in terms of the tattoo, I'm like, this is a thing that's appeared on several of their album covers. And anyway, so that's like the tie, I guess, to 2022 for that.
Hmm.
And also just to to Chris Waller, being on with Hot Water Music, the recording their Feel the Void record, being keeping as much up on those records as he has
Hmm.
on every other release, which I was glad to hear.
Yeah.
He's kind of like a mental health survivor too, which is
Hmm.
why he doesn't go on tours anymore as much for family reasons.
Yeah.
Prior to their last record, he basically they were going to tour for I think it's Exister is the one prior to that, prior to like a great their last full length record anyway prior to that. And he lacked, he wasn't able to go up on stage physically and hold a guitar. And they kind of had to review what they were going to do as a band within that.
Hmm.
So I mean, again, just from my personal experience, I mean, I've been through that kind of thing before, in my
Hmm.
life, not in any kind of musical way, but depression and anxiety stepping in the way of ability to do your job, man. That's
Yeah.
that's 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 happened to me before. So, and that even just kind of speaks to people write lyrics that you can find relatable and deliver them in a way that are
Yeah.
relatable. And where on Hot Water Music Records, he's an equally contributing entity,
Hmm.
in every way, in a completely democratic enterprise. When he's sort of in a band where he's the primary songwriter, the primary, he's singing on all the tracks basically. It just it comes across as different. So
Yeah.
the first, there I think there's 4 records out plus some singles and stuff. I
Hmm.
guess what I would just dial it back into with it was when Northcote kind of threw out that last kind of outro to his set there. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
man, acoustic punk,
Hmm.
sung sincerely and weirdly.
Yeah.
That is something that I just appreciate, right? Like,
Hmm.
people who just literally it's just they don't have they probably still have regular jobs.
Oh,
Waller,
for sure.
like
Yeah.
Waller does it, but
Yeah.
like people just kind of below his level tend to, man. Like, and so it's again, I just when I kind of see people who are around Wall, and again, the guy's like
Hmm.
he's like 48 years old or something. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm again, when you sort of see people sort of within your cohort who are speaking to things, from their experience that you can kind of relate to a bit. That's always kind of been more for me what
Hmm.
drives the interest than musical proficiency per se,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So and that's just kind of always been my kick. So
Yeah.
that's kind of as far as with them. And yeah, man. So Ship Thieves, Hot Water Music, Chris Wallard.
Yep.
Again, I'll just say that I really friggin' hope the dude circles back
Hmm.
and kind of puts out a solo record, or not a solo record, because he actually it started out as Chris Wallard and the Ship Thieves,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
then after two records, it just became the Ship Thieves. So, and the past two records have just been really dark, rumbly, like it's, there's the melodies there, but
Hmm.
it's pretty gnarly. So anyway, man, so yeah, that's you know yeah,
Let's go. So let's go. If I'll take my next pick, we'll go from
yeah,
something
let's
that's,
do please
relatable
do
music from someone in your age cohort
yeah.
to an artist I really enjoy, but who make me feel so fucking old. And I posted something about them on the little music Discord server that I'm on,
Are
and
you
just a factoid. And one of my friends was joking that, said said point made their bones turn to dust. That being that, uh, the band in question is Narrowhead from Houston, Texas, who've been around since about 2016. And the fact that made us all feel really old is their singer Jacob Duarte. Uh, he is the son of this like singer from like an aughts pop punk band
no way?
called The Tie That Binds, from I think from Dallas. Like they were also, I think they started in the 90s because I remember
So
them
he's
on
a so he's
comps in
a
the
so he,
90s.
so he's
But
a
like
nepo
I'm
baby,
pretty
right?
sure I went to look up some of their music and I'm pretty sure it was on like the dad's or like one of the dad's friends' YouTube channels. Um, so it's like the guy's father is probably our age, and he's just like it's and here's the thing that like wrecked my mind thinking about it. Is that, not to keep going back to the 90s, but how in like the late 90s and the early aughts there was like a real revival in like the garage rock scene
Oh yeah,
where there were
but
bands that were
raining
like,
sound,
yeah,
whatever.
like
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
like the perfect, just like recreating the sound perfectly, getting the whole look down, for this
The
very kind of like retro
Hives.
thing. Yeah, like imagine the Hives, or not quite the Hives, but like something maybe around, like, say like the Oblivions or something, or like maybe something even like a little
I
more like,
love the
or like
Oblivion.
almost like a
Yeah.
rock, or like how rockabilly artists are like really
Okay.
try to like recreate all the Sun artists
I
stuff.
gotcha. Yeah.
Like these are like, now imagine a bunch of Gen Z kids in their literally their parents' Sonic Youth t-shirts playing a mix of like Quicksand and Sonic Youth, or like Quicksand and like Sunny Day Real Estate, and maybe a little Smashing Pumpkins, and even filming their music videos in like like full screen, like 3:4 or whatever aspect ratio, so that there's the black bars on either side on YouTube to get the proper like square shape and everything. But just, yeah, and it wrecked my mind. Like there's apparently, the 90s, like sort of retro 90s, like alt rock influence is one of the things that's like coming back into fashion this year alongside like new metal and stuff like that. So these guys, it's like their music's pretty great. Their last album, 12th House Rock, or 12, is it 12th House? Sorry, is it? I gotta look at my notes. Yeah, 12th House Rock is pretty killer. It's like 3 guitars, bass, drums. The vocals kind of do like the drawn out like Jeremy Enoch from Sunny Day Real Estate thing sometimes. And like sometimes the music's kind of like slower and melodic. Sometimes it's a little kind of heavier and edgier and almost reminds me of like, yeah, bands like Quicksand and stuff. But that's all like fucking catnip to me. But it blows my mind that it's like these young kids that are like, it's like, I remember when I was, when you see folks like, that kind of wanted to sound like Black Sabbath and dressed exactly like classic Black Sabbath. Except, yeah, now it blows my mind seeing, one of these kids in like a Goo t-shirt, and
Well,
like the bass player in like,
it's interesting though to
it's
think.
just very interesting, and it's really good. It's like I really enjoy the music, but it just the the fact that that's what's retro now just kind of kills me in some ways.
Also, I completely agree with you. And
Yeah.
something that I've actually been
Or
reading, I'm
like
sure.
that's a
Yeah.
significant kind of thing that people do, like throwback stuff too. But they're quite good at it, and I quite enjoy it. And they're supposed to have a new album coming out, I think, next month.
Okay.
That they've already kind of been releasing. There's like a couple. If you look on YouTube, they have made quite a few music videos on YouTube, and yeah, they're all kind of like grainy looking, older film quality, and it's like I don't know how much of it's affected and how much it's just like we're doing this shit on our own, but it all kind of like leads to a certain aesthetic, and I'm
Well,
into
so
it. But it's
there's
just
some.
it blows my mind that that's a thing that people will be recreating like at a certain distance.
Well, I guess no, that's awesome. You made me totally interested and compelled. I was just, sort of going to throw in quickly there that I'm I'm reading this book right now. Corporate Rock Sucks: The Rise and
Oh,
Fall of SST Records
okay.
by this author from I think his name Rutland, something like that. Anyway, and
Is that the guy that wrote Our Band Could Change Your Life?
no,
Okay.
different guy, but
Okay.
still, which is a completely
Hmm.
awesome book. But no, but so like thinking about what you were describing, like people kind of going after Sabbath,
Hmm.
it's like when Greg Ginn, and Black Flag were kind of into sort of the 83, 84 iteration of Black Flag, where they
Hmm.
just started to slow it down and drone and go longer on songs, and it turns like so they were imitating like
Hmm.
Sabbath was doing that in like
Yeah.
74, and Black Flag's doing that in like 84,
Yeah.
and now this band or these bands that you're talking about,
And
we're
like
talking 40 years later, right?
exactly. That's
4 decades later. Like
yeah.
time has been flattened by the
Hmm.
internet because of the availability of this stuff. And you're like, I look at
Hmm.
stuff that my kids are into now, and I'm like, just kind of the stuff that from my generation or whatever, from our kind of, you know, whatever stuff that we grew up with,
Yeah.
that's kind of making its way into their lives. And I'm like,
Hmm.
man, like it's like it all really depends on what's the most readily disseminated by the internet.
Oh yeah.
And the last thing I'll say, because we are actually kind of running short
Yep.
on time here, Dan.
Okay.
For my end of things, before we kind of wind down here, is just
Hmm.
I follow ridiculous things on Instagram, as I'm sure
Hmm.
we all do, and one of the things that popped up in my feed today on one of these channels, like about it's called Dust to Digital, whatever. It's just
Yeah.
weird random music stuff. And it was that clip from the interview from like 19
Hmm.
like 99 or 2000 with David Bowie. And they're just like, or it was even like the late 1990s. So I'm like, and he's just like, yeah, the internet's basically alien consciousness.
Hmm.
We haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg of what's going to happen here. And the interviewer's like, no, it's just a delivery system. Really, how could it be so serious? He's like, no, this is going to change everything in ways that we have no freaking clue about. So to speak to your point about how people half of our age are being influenced by music that was put out really, before we were born or
Yeah.
while we were very young. To me, that's just like, okay, so this is the bizarro pop culture
Hmm.
paradigm that we all live in now,
Yeah.
in one way or another. So I'm Matt, and but the other before I'll just before I drop the mic,
Hmm.
the other ones here on my list, I was going to sort of speak to just a little bit, but it's in the notes, so it doesn't matter. Alkaline Trio, who I've already talked a lot about
Yeah.
before. Matt Skiba is recording now a new album. It's been confirmed on Instagram.
Hmm.
Don't know if it's going to be an Alkaline album. Mark Lanigan, who we're going to do another show before the anniversary of his passing, from Screaming Trees, grunge singer, put out a phenomenal run of solo records. I didn't even really dig into it much until
Mm.
he passed away last year. Okay, February 22nd, 2022 is when he died.
Oh
A lot of
wow.
yeah, that's some heavy juju,
That's a lot
right?
of twos.
And he lived beyond. People expected him to die when he was 30,
Yeah.
and he lived to be almost 60. So there you go.
Hmm.
And the Beastie Boys, only because I listened to Paul's Boutique for the first time in my life around November
Ah.
last year, and it
Yeah.
literally transformed my consciousness of music.
Yeah.
And I don't have that happen much. Like
Hmm.
I didn't experience that with the Replacements even. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, this is punk music and I love it. I've never had a record where this is like, is this music? If so, it was one of those, right?
Yeah.
So Paul's Boutique, and there I rammed them
Yeah.
all in. I'm gonna
Do you,
pass the mic to Dan.
all right. I'm going to quickly throw my two that'll be in the notes.
Yeah.
I picked Edmonton's Homefront just because they put out a great mini LP, I guess 6-song, 12-inch thing in December of 2021 of last year. It's a project from a couple folks named Grant McKinnon and Clint Fraser from Edmonton, Alberta, who've been in a lot of great bands out that way.
Okay.
It's like kind of, I guess, angry new wave is the best way I could describe
Yeah.
it. But it's guys who played like, it's like a guy that played in like a really kind of like thrashy skate hardcore band, and a guy that played in like an early aughts dance punk band making new wave music together. And it's
Is it
pretty
like
much
the Faint? Please tell me it sounds like the Faint.
ah,
No. Okay. That's fine. That's
it's
fine. That's
close.
fine.
It's
Okay.
close. You'll I think you'll enjoy it. And also I picked
Okay.
Angel Dust, which is the ongoing musical project of Justice Tripp, formerly the former vocalist of Trapped Under Ice.
Oh, I've heard of them. Good.
Yes,
Good. Okay.
and
Good.
also featuring a couple folks from a band called Turnstile that are getting pretty popular these days. Brendan Yates, and
What?
I can't remember their
Dope.
drummer's name, but
Yeah.
Brendan Yates played guitar in Trapped Under Ice with Justice Tripp, but instead of playing like angry straight edge hardcore, they're playing kind of like almost like Modern Lovers, early Talking Heads, almost like Violent Femmes, like acoustic, a lot of like, I don't want to say folk punk because it's not as like affected as that, but there's a lot of acoustic guitar involved, but it's very, a little more driving sounding. A lot of their early stuff was a little more fast and punky, but yeah, this stuff, it's like just like great smart pop music made by people that used to make angry heavy stuff.
By
And their
people who are younger than
album
us, Dan.
Yak,
You're
a collection of truck songs, is the album that I killed pretty hard last year. That's their most recent release. But yeah, I think they might maybe not doing as much stuff. I know they did a tour not that long ago, but yeah, given that some of the members are a little busy with their other project. Yeah. Anyway, those are my other picks. It was great to talk to you again, Matt.
No, man, that's dope. And I didn't mean to kind of rush it towards much there at the end. For one thing, I'm always just,
Mhm.
this is like, I'd like to say that I heard about 30% of the bands that you were speaking to. So like when I'm being like, again, what I put on my educator brain, I'm just like, I really need to Anyway, this it's like I've been saying on the other podcast, like about how anything I do on the tech thing inadvertently has some benefits for this. So man, I mean, I don't know. We're on Spotify now. We're on the Spotify allegedly.
Ooh.
We're on the Google podcast, and we're on the what's
the Apple podcast?
the Apple machine.
That one,
right?
That one.
Where you pull the and you're somebody who listens to podcasts, which
I do.
Yeah, man, I'm a lame ass Marvin. I just friggin' I don't yet. Sorry, podcast. I know that's hypocritical as crap, but anyway, so that's what's going on, and so it's going out to a wider potential audience, Dan, and audience. So. So thanks to everybody, for anybody who listens to this even once. Just thanks, for the stuff. Thanks to Dan for the topic, and for keeping this running here with me. And until next time, okay?
All right. Bye.